Esoterica, the podcast, where we discuss the obscure, offbeat, and unusual. I'm Chris Schultz.
And I'm Aaron Christian.
What do you got for us today, Aaron?
Well, everybody, we're in for what I would call a treat. So we're going to be listening today to the album Barriers by Frank Iero and the Future Violence. Now, a lot of people should know who Frank Iero is because he is from My Chemical Romance. He was the rhythm guitar player. And after being in that super intensely popular band for so long, he decided to do his own thing when they broke up. So he's been in a number of different groups, and every time that he has released a new album off of this sort of project, which I'll dub the Frank Iero and the Project, he's given the band a different name. So it was the Cellabration, which first time he pulled like Paul McCartney, recorded all the instruments himself. So the Celebration was just him. Then he did the Patience, and now the Future Violence. And this is where we are. So the album we're listening to today, Barriers, was released in May 31st, 2019. Not in May, but on May 31st, 2019. It's their third album that he's put out under this like Anthem project. And yeah, the first single off of it was Young and Doomed, which is probably I believe the second song we'll listen to. So you'll hear that that's the single part of it. But it's interesting, and this is the thing that was personal for me, is when you listen to this song, it brings together a lot of influences. It's got like a soulful kind of folk song. He's got metalcore even, and then this like poppy alternative like rock thing going on. So there's a lot of things that come together to make this what it is. He's always said in a lot of interviews, like these are the people he's wanted to work with. This is the album he's wanted to make, and it's really interesting compared to what I've heard before. Now, a lot of his songs, you hear a lot of like horror allusions he uses in it, whether it's explicit or not. You can hear those things in there.
Okay.
But this song, I listened to it on a car ride going somewhere, and I was just like, wow, this is a really good album. Like, I had a good afternoon kind of thing. Like when we listened to the Van Morrison album, and you said it to was it Freedy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just totally... Yeah, put me in a good place.
Exactly. And the last thing I'll say about that before we get into it is, in an interview with Kerrang, Frank described Barriers as being a collection of songs that he had never before attempted, but always wanted to try. He added, and I quote, "These songs are about experiences that were either walls I wanted to break down or walls that I built up around myself in order to protect myself," which I see is kind of like a, relation to maybe Pink Floyd's The Wall. The ambition is for these songs to be perceived without any kind of past notion of what the project is supposed to sound like, to break down any and all boundaries and barriers that we've set up that other people have set up for us. So this whole thing is supposed to be different. The barriers are being broken here, and that's what we're going to be listening to today.
Cool.
So the first track we'll be listening to is probably, I think, the soul track that I had mentioned before, and that is A New Day Is Coming.
I took a drive through the country one night. Saw the riverbeds all dusty and dry. The banks were parched and the heavens went dark. And the clouds, they began to cry, is what they said.
So you wrote that song for his kids?
Yeah, there's a song on the EP that came up before this called BFF, Best Friends Forever. And that's a song he wrote with his kids. And then he did a rendition of it for the EP that was like with this band. But it's really cool. I like that he always tries to incorporate his kids into the music that he makes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the notes. Somebody interviewed him, and he specifically was trying to come up with a song that he could sing with them at night and would be an appropriate message he thought they should hear. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that is the only song of that kind on this entire record because it's completely different from here on out.
Interesting. Yeah. And so that's dedication of a father. Like, I'm putting this on here regardless of what the theme of the album is.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool that he does that. So the next song we're going to be listening to is called Young and Doomed. As I mentioned before, this was the single that came out. And completely different vibe from what we just listened to. So let's get into it.
On to bad signs we were born into families that had sworn up and down they would keep us safe.
Whoa.
Yeah. So there are two lines in this song that I think are important to note. The beginning of the second verse is the line he says, "Most of the time, I'm convinced that I survived." And that's in reference to a bus accident that they were in like, I think November 2017. Here's why that maybe, or maybe it's 2018, that made me a little irritated, because I was supposed to go to a show like a week after he got in the bus, before he got in the bus, no, a week after he got in the bus accident. But there's no way in hell they were playing.
Yeah.
So I get refunded, and obviously, you know, like, stuff happens. Like, I'm not mad at it, but I'm irritated because I'm like, man, I could have gone and see that show. The other part is at the end of that same verse, and everybody who's a My Chemical Romance fan like gets pissed about it. They have this song called "I'm Not Okay," and when they're in the break, Frank Iero says something along the lines of "I'm okay" or whatever. Everyone's going to kill me right now because I can't remember what the exact line is. So the line fit, and I remember reading an interview, and he did that in there. He goes, everyone's going to get upset about it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So when it says, "Oh, wait, that's the other guy," that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, making a reference to his former life.
Yeah, exactly. I think he messaged all the members of My Chemical Romance. They're like, yeah, dude, whatever. So I thought that was cool. Cool, nice little callback.
Cool.
Anyways, this next song is probably one of my favorites on this album. It's called Fever Dream. The feel, again, every song is a little different on here. And this vibe of this song I like a lot. So let's take a listen.
Interesting.
I assume you hear more of the horror aspects of that in the song. Simple yet complex ventricle taste test.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, because as oftentimes they go to Genius to look at the lyrics, and somebody made an annotation about, you know, what a ventricle is and what the connotation of using that is. I think it's wordplay more than anything else.
100%.
Simple yet complex ventricle taste test. Like, that's just a good sounding sentence.
It is. It is.
I think there's less cannibalistic connotation and more clever wordplay. He sort of reminded me of, I got The Cure vibe in this song.
I can see that.
Which is because musically, you know, it doesn't sound like The Cure, but I think it's his vocals sort of reminded me of Robert Smith.
And like we explored in the last song, how he took that it's "Trust Me, everyone, don't get upset." But that line from the My Chemical Romance song, they're also talking about in here, and I'm sure you read that on Genius, is talk about "Old and Loaded," which there's a line in one of their other songs, "Na Na Na," My Chemical Romance, that's "Young and Loaded." So I could see that being a thing, but it didn't stand immediately out to me, and I don't know if it did anyone else. But so fun little thing there. Next song is called "The Host."
The Host.
I can't stand for what happened, drifting off and letting on. High roads full of mass contusions, my crippling fears just sanity, and you're choking on all your cold decisions.
I'm hearing The Cure again.
Yeah, this the guitar, like the boom 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 doo, doo, whatever the strumming pattern is. I talk a lot about strumming patterns for some reason, but it reminds me of a riff I've been working on that I took the element of what the strumming pattern was from the song, not knowing about it, but it's almost similar to when we did 16 horsepower, that kind of catching up sort of thing, like the way that was strummed. I think it's just an interesting way of enunciating your guitar tone. I don't know.
I really like that line, "You're playing house like we're home alone." I don't know, that gets me in the feels.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of like wordplay, unmade beds and blanket statements.
Blanket statements, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're really, really cool imagery and wordplay here.
Yeah. There's something about, and this is not intended anyway, a dig at some of the younger artists we listen to, but there's a maturity you get as you age. You know,
Yes.
it's commonly referred to as wisdom. And you can see that in the difference in lyrics between somebody who's, 20 and singing. I mean, I've read some amazing lyrics from 20-year-olds, so I'm not discounting them.
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes to how much you've experienced in an amount of time. Typically speaking, a 40-year-old has experienced way more than a 20-year-old has.
Yeah.
But sometimes a 20-year-old experiences some of the worst things they can within a short period of time.
Yeah, and I think as long as we're speaking in generalizations, I think a 40-year-old tends to couch what they're saying in symbolism and references, as opposed to a 20-something just comes out and
Yes.
says it.
Yeah.
And both of those are valid, and both of those are, independently have their own
Yeah.
strengths.
And on that point, I think that's what makes this project for Frank just so much more so much more personal, because you think about My Chemical Romance, like they started that band because of 9/11, and then it just was something they did when they were maybe no older than me. And so to think at that age to create stuff, like he was in a band, Pensy Prep, and I hate that band. I think it's awful. And this project, I think, just puts so much more thought into things. So our next track is called Basement Eyes.
So proud yet insecure, and sad to realize that we used to get high, but now we just get down. We're washed up on the shore. It's unrecognizable.
Sometimes I really have to hand it to short people because they often can't reach it themselves.
It's funny that you say that, because Frank Iero is short. He's like my height short, which compared to most males is pretty short.
Less than average.
Yeah, him and I are he's like 5'5", 5'6", so.
So how old is Frank?
He's in his 40s, I believe,
Okay.
but I'm not certain on that. But I'm pretty sure he's in his 40s.
Because it's interesting to me, just thinking about the albums that you've introduced me to. There's been a couple of times that the lyrics talk about that getting old and
38.
not necessarily selling out, but losing that spark. And it's somewhat amusing to me to hear a 20-something sing about
Yes.
that, because your life's just starting. So Frank, 38, he's getting towards middle age. That makes a little more sense.
Right.
To see some of the people around you that were full of fire not so full of fire anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. It's almost his like lending a hand to be like, we're gonna get back up and do this.
Well, and honestly, I like that approach rather than criticizing people for not being as impassioned anymore. He's like, come on, let's get excited. Let's do this. I like that. That's
Right.
uplifting.
It's really cool.
Good song. I'm liking it.
So our next song is called Ode to Destruction.
Thought enough for both of us, but barely said a word. Been back and forth 1,000 times, hoping not to lose. And I know I should take it slow, but I never followed suit. And this ache you gave, it dies with me. This time I'm finally through. I wish it wasn't true.
All right, so anyone who's a fan of Kurt Vonnegut is cool in my book.
Okay.
That's
I actually don't know who that is. I know I can visually I have seen this person before, but
You should read Kurt Vonnegut. I don't know if you enjoy like just sitting down and reading books.
I don't, but I will if you tell me to.
You totally should read Kurt Vonnegut. Slaughterhouse-Five, Cat's Cradle, Breakfast of Champions. It's good stuff. Anyway, that and so here's to those that wish us well. The rest can go to hell. So he mentions in an interview that that's a toast that his stepmother used frequently. I would, if I like that and I kind of want to use that, but I think I'd pump that out to, so here's to those that wish us well. The rest of you can go to hell. Just so it's, iambic pentameter.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's nice reading, like in that same quote that you referenced. I mean, he grew up around addiction, having this element of knowing this predetermined thing lives inside you as well. So it's knowing that, you know, like addiction being like a disease in and of itself, you know. And
Yeah, and I know if anybody in my family had a substance abuse problem, they kept it pretty hidden. I mean, that's not something I grew up with.
right,
But my first girlfriend, her father was an alcoholic, and there was always a shadow looming over her. Like, she was very aware that that's what was in store for her if she didn't tread lightly.
yes, yeah,
And I can't imagine like carrying around that kind of burden. I know from my struggle with cigarettes that I have an addictive personality.
hmm
I think if I had discovered like pills or hard drugs or anything like that, I would have a problem.
right.
Like, it took me 2.5 years after having a massive heart attack to quit smoking. Like, I know
I remember.
I have a problem.
You tried. You did try. I
I
give you a lot
did.
of credit.
I tried like hell, and it finally got through. But
Those homicidal urges, though.
yeah, and honestly, I've had this conversation with my wife because she still smokes, but she only has like 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. But she'll leave butts out in the yard, or ask on occasion ask me to pick up a pack for her, and I try to stress to her that I didn't quit smoking. I just choose not to smoke every day. So I try to stay away from those things because I could very easily become a smoker
Right.
again. So the rest can go to hell.
Our next song is called "The Unfortunate."
Okay, before we go any further, I want to take a minute to talk about the awesome folks at Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way. In fact, it's the way that we make a podcast. Let me explain.
It's free.
There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer.
Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more.
And you can make money from your podcast. Best part, no minimum listenership.
Ooh. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
It's so cool. We found the service. We started using it. We're making podcasts.
Yeah, making podcasts, making money, having a good time.
So listen, you want to get you out there. You want to be heard. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, darling. I'm not the man I thought I was. I might regret it. I got so good at giving. Oh, I felt you fade away, and let you go. I know.
So this song, I think, is really personal to me in the sense that, you know, there are like people in your life that, you know, go away from you, and you know, like sometimes you make mistakes, and I think the self-reflection in this that Frank is having, I think I like to do for myself. You know, when I make mistakes or things like that, I like to reflect and realize that, you know, everything I had in mind has just gone away now. So why the hell did that happen? And is it my fault? Did I do something wrong? You need to think back on yourself to build and become a better person.
Yeah, if you don't learn from your life lessons, then you're bound to repeat them.
Yeah, history.
Yeah. I've often said that God likes to reteach me things.
Yeah.
And I learned, like, I understand what the lesson I'm learning. It's, I guess, not putting it to use that makes it necessary to.
Yeah. Well, like here, lost in the moment. I prayed we'd find our way back home. God is my witness. I never meant to hurt you. So, you know, like God saw me. I tried the best I could, but, you know.
Yeah. You
things still
deserve a
happen.
better song.
Yeah.
That's kind of a sad sentiment.
So the next song, you know, the song Video Killed the Radio Star? I'm sure you do.
I do.
So keep that in mind when you listen to this. Not musically speaking, but just like what that song's about. Keep that in mind.
Looking back, there's nothing for me there.
definitely, so the song's moto pop, but I'm noticing a definite punk influence on that.
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting. So on Genius, and somebody annotated this, and I think it's worth mentioning here, is that the title refers to pop music, which is progressive, yeah, and the prefix moto, meaning in motion. So what is popular is always changing.
Yeah.
And if you take pop music instead of what our preconceived notion of what pop is now, and take into account that it's just the word popular shortened, I think that when you look at punk, like, this is completely different. But what I find ironic is it kind of has almost this like older vibe to it a little bit. I don't know how to explain that, but it's got like elements of like that overproduced 80s kind of vibe, and mixed with a punk sort of thing. It's kind of weird to explain exactly what I mean, but he's also got a quote here. He says that Frank Iero says in Kerrang, the same interview we've been referencing, I think, this whole time. And that's, we tell stories, we play music, and we put it out into the world. And you may think you know people because you've experienced the things that they've done, but just because you've witnessed it from afar doesn't mean you know their experience. I've been around the block a couple times, and I've had the shit kicked out of me a couple times, too. I'm proud of that because it made me who I am.
I would think that that's going to be a unique challenge to being a lyricist. You're writing something intensely personal, yet people identify with it. Yeah, they don't know.
Right.
I don't know because I'm not a famous person, but I think most times people internalize the music rather than assume they understand the artist.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm sure there are plenty of fans out there who think they know Bono in and out, and they don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Frank.
I'd rather try to relate to the experience that this artist is talking about than try to just understand their life.
I'm narcissistic enough that, I make it about me. Like, how does this...
Because why the hell should I enjoy music if I don't make it about me, right?
Yeah, I don't give a shit about this guy.
Yeah. Speaking of this guy, the next song that we are listening to is called Medicine Square Garden.
So, help me God, if somebody on Genius points out that that's a play on words, I'm never going to Genius again.
I hate to break it to you, but that's
gonna.
Almost a certain thing.
Yes.
I know there's more to the story, and I think the Genius actually talks about what this song is about a little bit more, obviously. But Madison Square Garden, My Chemical Romance played Madison Square Garden, so I think there's something with addiction and things playing on there. Plus, the guitar work and the pre-choruses of this song are mint. So we're gonna listen to it.
There's way too much on my mind to give you all my time, but I know there's something wrong. Justice in photographs, and such that the eyes you have that cry yourself.
So it seems like, from what I'm gathering on Genius, that this is the most important song on the album.
Yes. The two things I was going to bring up and actually have nothing to do with the message of the song. One is the music video for this song is like nuts. It's like these women dancing in like a studio, and then they're watching this video of the band play the song, and then like all of a sudden these monsters come in and start eating the band or something, and it's nuts. It's if you have 5.5 minutes, go check out Madison Square Garden's music video. The second thing is this thing he said on Loudwire, which I think when I mentioned kind of jokingly before about how the guitar is mint, he actually said he told Loudwire that this is one of his favorite songs that he's ever written, and that he had a hand in writing. So the guitar and the hook is all based around like an E minor, which is true. I can play this song. And that was like one of the things where he had it in his head, and he was going to work together, and how the vocals were going to work with that guitar line. And as you can hear, like, You Gave Me Butterflies, pinned to the sides of my stomach line, all that stuff.
Yep.
But in describing how the chord changes are going to land was very difficult for him, and he's happy that he had people and great musicians to work with this time that could make that happen. And I could totally understand how the structure of this song is so unique in and of itself. Trying to make where those chords going to land based around that melody. That's insane that he was able to actually pull that off. I think it was really cool.
Cool.
And as I mentioned before, also this is the title could be a reference to Iero's experience during this time with My Chemical Romance. which when the band's fame led to a performance at Madison Square Garden, whilst Iero was coping with the stresses of a high-profile band and constant touring by using anti-anxiety medication.
Yeah, sort of like the concept behind Pink Floyd's The Wall, the song Comfortably Numb in particular. Roger Waters was suffering appendicitis, I think.
Ow.
And was on muscle relaxants and that whole thing. I am very happy to report that nobody made an annotation mentioning that was a play on words, because that was screamingly obvious, which is would have been my contention. So
the last thing I will say is, because I think it says it better than I try to explain about the music video again. It says on Genius, and I'd rather say this. Basically, guar. I don't know what this is.
Guar.
Yeah. So basically, a bunch of guar.
Are you not familiar with guar?
I am not.
Oh my god, dude! So they are like a heavy metal band that all dresses up in giant monster costumes.
Yes.
They are something else.
So now that we have discussed this, and actually I'm just going to read verbatim because it'll do better. The music video for the song premiered on April 20th, 2020, and features members of GWAR attacking the band as they play during a surreal 80s horror-fueled workout session. So check out the music video. Nice. It's nuts. Our next song.
Oh, we're totally doing a GWAR album next season.
Our next song is called No Love, and we'll take a listen to that. It's nowhere near as GWAR-filled as this, but here we go.
No love in my love, no glass of steel, no thrill from my touch, it kills me to feel the ghost of what we once embraced. No telling your face, though I can tell, there's no talk on your lips.
No Love.
No love. Breakup song.
Yes.
My words of wisdom.
Yeah, that's... I mean, there's not a lot of annotations, and breaking it out from that, that's about all I got.
It's pretty straightforward.
It is. It is. Fun tune, though. Fun tune, I will say. Okay, the next song we have is Police Police, and I actually don't remember how this song goes. So this will be interesting because it's almost like I'm listening to it for the first time. So, Police Police.
Unimpressed by the ignorance we choose to command, disgraced by the hate we love to embrace. Unimpressed by the ignorance we choose to command, disgraced by the hate we love to embrace.
It's an angry song.
It is. Well, it's political.
It is. So, once again, and I think this is a common theme with me, I take umbrage with something that somebody wrote in the annotations on Genius. So there's a line in the song, "Leave what's left for the ones who are doomed to come next," touching on the current economic struggles of America, particularly those of millennials and Generation Z, which is not incorrect. I mean, the song's addressing the current state of things and how that impacts what's left for people. But they go on to break it down a little more, talking about, the economy and things like college tuition and food and housing become less and less affordable, and that many young adults are left with the fear of the growing possibility that they will never be able to achieve a stable life like their parents and grandparents did. So I just want to point out, as a Gen Xer, for millennials and Gen Zers who might be feeling that, Gen X was the first generation to not do as well as the generation before it. We came from broken homes and an economy that was crumbling, and from the get-go, before we even got to college, we realized that we were not going to be able to attain the things that came before us. So I get you. Like, that's not a new thing. So if you're a millennial or Gen Z, your parents went through the same thing, and if they are successful, it's exception to the rule.
And I would argue that this song has nothing to do with that.
I honestly, I do too. I don't think that's where he's getting at.
No, it's political. I think it's more about immigration and human rights than it is. I mean, the pursuit of happiness is a fucking right. I don't think in this is talking about that aspect of it, which is a good point. I mean, I don't diss him for bringing it up, but that has nothing to do with this at all.
Yeah, I think where we talking about leave what's left for the ones who are doomed to come next is it's the current state of the country and the
Right.
political climate more than your monetary success.
Right. This next song is the most personal song for me on here. You know, I had something happen that made me listen to this song and go, this is really something I needed right now. And it's called Great Party.
Our hearts need work. I'm scared one born to lose. Tired of acting tough when I should have known better. And all ones get stuck. So we taught ourselves to smile. Your shine so bright that it makes me shiver. Just when you thought it can't get worse, always.
Some asshole once said, "It's better to have loved and lost
Some
than never
asshole.
loved at all."
Yes.
I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah. And well, so it looks like for this song, it's interesting with Frank, is that he, and I can actually totally understand this because we went through this with the Something Saturday album where, you know, sometimes you write songs for an album and you have a hard time placing where the track should go in the track listing because, or what would be a good visual representation for them. And other times it's like a universe opens up its playbook and tells you exactly how every piece fits into this giant puzzle. And that's how we felt like making this song in this video. And that's how I remember feeling when we wrote a lot of our songs for our record.
Mm-hmm.
And so I totally understand that. And I can totally, like, this is different than every other song on here. A lot of the songs are this way, but this one in particular, it's the only slow song. It sounds like Weezer, and none of the other ones do. So I can see where you're just like, I don't know where the hell to put this. But it's really cool. The music video for this almost looks like an AA meeting, and this band's just playing, and everyone's like, okay, whatever.
And some depressing lyrics in here.
It is. It's a good song if you're in a bad mood.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes we find ourselves in these relationships where you don't really gel with the other person, but there's enough going on that you can overlook
Yep.
the glaring problems. Those are relationships that aren't meant to last.
No.
At the end of the day,
Yeah. If you need to overlook things instead of just enjoying the things about the other person, then that's not a good thing. So, advice from Chris and Aaron.
Yeah, and yet having said that, at this very same time, it also reminds me, like my first relationship, that was 8.5 years. And it didn't end well, but I think part of the problem was at the end there, we were not the people that we were when we started.
Right.
And we ignored that for a long time. So
We ignored the signs. Our next song, as you can ascertain, is probably a little grim, is called 6 Feet Down Under.
Now you don't have to accept my fears, but you better respect my fears, cause, and I know I don't have to explain myself to you, but I might feel better if I try. So there's a part of me that's not sure if I'm here. There's a definite part of me.
So, bus accident.
So I have a story, and listening to this song reminded me of the story, and that kind of hurt reminded me of the story. And remember how I said earlier I was irritated about this bus accident? I think this is an interesting story to tell, and how people's lives affect other people's lives.
Yep.
So this bus accident happened October 13th, 2016. And I was supposed to go to the show. It was after their second record came out, to see them on November 25th, 2016.
Okay.
But they got into a bus accident, so I couldn't go to that show. Ironically, that day, I got a message from a girl that I knew asking me to go out to lunch with her and her friend. And so I did. And I ended up dating her friend after meeting her that day. It ended up being one of the worst relationships of my life. And so I often think if I never went to have lunch with them, I went to that show instead, and they didn't get in this bus accident, that none of that would have happened. And it's the weirdest thing to think about, that just, I mean, this is really basic level thinking, but if that bus accident just caused that entire portion of my life. Really, really weird to think of it that way.
That's the butterfly effect.
Right.
Ripples.
Exactly. So just interesting aspect. But this whole thing is about his experience with the bus, not me. And his was way worse, thinking that he's going to die and that it's not even real.
Yeah, like there's no way for me to say this without sounding like a dick, so I'm just gonna go for it. I was kind of wondering as I'm listening to this if maybe he wasn't making more out of this bus accident than possible. Like their Metallica was in a bus accident. The bus rolled. Their bassist died. The whole band never got over that. There have been bands who have been in plane crashes. So
Yes.
I wanted to look up and see exactly what happened. An empty passenger bus hit them while they were unloading their van for a show. And Frank was dragged about 10 feet along the curb by the bus. Apparently he was wearing a rucksack, and that's what kept him from getting squished. So nobody was seriously injured from the sounds of it. But that's definitely a life-changing event, and I can see why that would be traumatic. So
I mean, if he wasn't wearing that, like, he could have died.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And it being dragged 10 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but you were just dragged by a bus that just smashed into you. Like
You think 10 feet's not a lot, but when you're being dragged by a bus, it's 100 feet.
Yeah, when you're the dude underneath the wheel being scraped on the pavement like a turd. Yeah, dude, that's messed up.
So
it seems like he's got and kind of what he's working through in this song is wondering if he actually died that day, and this is all like just his brain coming up with stuff.
Right.
Life. Interesting thought.
Very interesting thought.
Of course, if you believe in the multiverse, he did die that day.
I do believe in the multiverse, so.
But one of you in a different universe doesn't believe in the multiverse. Think about that.
That's crazy. Our next song our final song on this album is called 24 Karat Lush.
Okay, is it 24 Karat Lush? Because I was thinking 24K, I was thinking
I thought the same
24,000.
thing, but if you listen to the chorus of the song, they mention gold, and I'm certain that has to be carat. It could be 1,000. If somebody knows better, please correct me, but I'm pretty sure it's carat based on
The
context
reference
clues.
gold, yeah. I think
So, let's take a listen.
One more night in solitude, removed from everyone. Even though I wanted to, I never had much fun. That I know.
Interesting note to take the album out on.
I'm not sure if this has anything to do with it, but My Chemical Romance's first album, at the end of it, has a song called Demolition Lovers. And it's like this Bonnie and Clyde type of couple that, like, they die in the end. And then there's this whole, like, theory that the next album is all about their ghosts, whatever. And I feel like this is taking on a similar vibe to that song. Maybe going out on a similar kind of note musically and sort of lyrically. So I think that's interesting. You can, and from that standpoint, you can hear the MCR influence into the song. So
Yeah, and I'm kind of going with so the title's 24 Karat Lush. So I'm thinking alcohol problem. I don't know how much of an addiction plays into the lyrics, but it definitely seems like
well, addiction is a theme in the album. So
it definitely is. And this seems sort of like it almost goes so far like a murder-suicide note. Like, all right, we're checking out.
And that drum break was really nice in the middle. It's soothing.
Oh, it's good.
Which I think you could even take that word and take it as far to that murder-suicide thing. Like, the suicide is the soothing part for the person that feels in pain. But that's my take.
Okay.
And that's Barriers. That's it.
It was an interesting album. I enjoyed that.
Well, I will give a sneak peek that at some point later this season we will revisit Frank and talk a little bit more about him, which we haven't done before. But I don't care; it's our show. So
it's esoteric. That's all that matters.
It is. So that's really it for this episode.
Yeah, we got something interesting coming up next, but we're not going to tell you what it is.
We're not going to divulge.
Partly because our schedule's not nailed down.
Yes.
But,
Be sure to check out our last week's video and podcast, which is up in the air for us at the moment, but you should know what it is by now. And our geocaching video, which came out a month ago now. Also, don't forget to visit esotericathepodcast.com for more amazing content, our social media, our Famous Folks series, which probably just wrapped up. We're not really sure about that yet either. And our Patreon account, which if you like to see some extra content, discounts from our store, and more, visit esotericthepodcast.com and scroll over to our Patreon.
And when you're on our YouTube channel, checking out our videos, make sure to subscribe.
Yes, that's a thing that we don't do on podcasts that I forgot about.
Yes, we need your subscribers.
Well, without any further ado, we will see you next week on Esoterica the Podcast.
I'm Chris Schultz.
And I'm Aaron Christian.
Stay cool.